Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. So inshallah, the continuation of the series, as I promised, I said like the next week inshallah we start from Friday, every Friday inshallah. Hopefully we have a video up. So basically I stopped as far as the lessons, and I said inshallah hopefully in the next video I'll get into the lessons with Abdul Hakim and what we did and how we studied. So as I mentioned previously, during during Ramadan and the time that we were getting ready, just getting ready for the class, I was already working on the book myself. So I was already formulating like my own type of like methodology, and because I was already, how can I say this, like my method of like memorization and learning anything was always already just to read it over and over and over and over and over again, and everything that I took I always read it out loud. So when Abdul Hakim had given me the same advice, as far as the how to learn and how to what to do, it's something. I mean, something I already did. But the thing that he did teach me was that was probably the best method as far as learning the Arabic language, was that he was telling me like, look, man, we're going to be taking you're going to be getting all these new words, and what the majority of the people are going to do is they're going to take these new words and they're just going to translate them. Like they're going to say, like, for example, dhahaba, to go. Yadhabu, he goes. Dhahabtu, I went. They're going to translate like this, and that's how they're going to try to memorize it. And what you do when you do this is that what you're doing is you're not training your mind to use the language. You're training your mind to translate the language. You're training yourself to become a translator. And obviously, I was with him 100% because I was not trying to be a translator. In fact, if you've seen any of maybe one of the later previous videos that I did, I made a video about the book, the 30 Lessons book, and I was speaking harshly about translation. I went to Yemen with that mindset. So this is not like a mindset that was developed later on. I went to Yemen with that mindset because we had already started to see the danger that these translations were doing, because we were already seeing brothers who were American who couldn't speak any Arabic whatsoever running around saying Shaykh al-Islam said this and Ibn al-Qayyim said this, and it's like, dude, you haven't read any book of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah in your whole entire life. You don't know, I mean, you couldn't even name a book by Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, much less could you sit here and be quoting from it in English. So we had already started to see that. And the brother that I was with in Atlanta, he was very anti-translation, even though he himself became a translator, which is kind of funny. He became a translator and a Sufi. Make that make sense. I can't make it make sense. So Allah Mustaan. So I don't drink coffee anymore, but this coffee from Chiapas. I was in the market the other day, or yesterday in fact. I saw like coffee from Chiapas. I said, I gotta get that. I don't even drink coffee. I can't say I don't drink coffee anymore, but I wouldn't consider myself a coffee drinker anymore. But I saw that I had, because if you know the story from before, when I was gonna go to Chiapas to go fight with the rebels in Chiapas. So as soon as I saw that, it just brought all those memories back. I was like, I gotta get this and make this in the morning. Subhanallah. But it's a good coffee though. A bit strong though. But so anyways, that was my mindset anyways. I'm not trying to become a translator. I'm not trying to program my mind to translate, and I didn't even want to, if I could not even translate, like my goal was to be able to speak Arabic and to turn around to a person in English and they say, can you, what did you say? I don't know. I don't know how to translate it. I wanted to engross myself in the Arabic language to the point that I understood the Arabic language through the Arabic language. And then I had to, like, later on, I would have to learn how to translate, obviously, because that, if I ever went back to America, but I had no plans of coming back to America. So I could care less about the English language and I could care less about translation. So my whole goal was just to learn the Arabic the way that, and I wanted to understand Arabic the way the Arabs understood Arabic. That's it. So that was basically, once he taught me how his method, which I'm going to explain now, is that he was telling me, instead of taking these new words and just translating them, then what you should do is you should take like the new words and put them into sentences that will help you understand the meaning of the word and help you understand what it is. What you can understand the meaning of the word through the context of the sentence without having to go back to the translation. And then you take every new word that you write out, you said you write them out into sentences. Then he said, come to me and I'll check the sentences, or go to anybody, because we had other brothers. It wasn't just Abdul Hakim. There's like 4 or 5 brothers that were pretty strong in the Arabic language. In fact, they were stronger than, we had like a few brothers that were stronger than him. So, anybody, like the brother Abu Zainab, he was very strong in the Arabic language. I mean, probably amongst us was probably the strongest. And you had, at that time, Abdullah Makfi, he was pretty strong. He was teaching, he got to the point where he started teaching Nahu, even to the Arabs. So you had other brothers that we could go to and to check the sentences, to make sure that the sentences were correct before you started, before I started memorizing the sentences, make sure that they're correct first. Either go to him or somebody else. So every time he gave me a word and I understood the meaning, I would write it out into a sentence, So for example, and it's not just the word that he gives you, because you want the word. Like if he gives you a fi'l, right? So you got the fi'l madi, which is let's say dhahaba, and then you have you got the mudari, because you need to memorize that yadhabu, And if you want to memorize, idhab, you don't really need to memorize the fi'l amr, because the fi'l amr is going to be the same as the mudari. So if the fi'l mudari is yadhabu, the fi'l amr is going to be what? Idhab. It's going to be with a fatha on the ayn, on the middle letter. So it doesn't matter, I didn't have to write sentences with the fi'l amr, because once I understood the principle of how we make the fi'l amr, the only time that I would have to write a sentence with the fi'l amr is if it was something like, maybe you had like at the end of the word, it was a harf min huruf al-illah or something of that nature, just to memorize it, right? But obviously, once I started to understand Nahu, I didn't even have to do that, because as you understand that, the harf al-illah, and if it's majzoom, and it gets dropped, so even then it becomes easier. So whatever the harf illa is at the end, and he taught us this too. If it's a waw, obviously it's going to be a u. If it's a ya, it's going to be e. So I mean, these types of things, khalas. Once I understood them, I didn't have to write these in a notebook. But the main thing that I wanted to write in the notebook was the fi'l madi, the fi'l mudari, and the masdar. Like these 3 things. So we had dhahaba, yadhabu, dhahaban. So then I would write, for example, as a sentence, dhahaba ahmadu ila suq, or we won't say the suq, because we say like dhahaba ahmadu ila al-masjid. And if I had 2 words, like for example, let's say in that same class, we took the dhahaba wa darasa. So then I would write, like for example, dhahaba ahmadu ila al-masjidi li yudrusa al-lughat al-arabiyyah. For example, if I wanted to combine the 2 sentences, if not, then I would just make it like dhahaba one group with dhahaba, one group with darasa. So, but let's just deal with dhahaba. All right. So dhahaba Ahmadu ila al-masjidi, adhabu ila al-masjidi liqada'i as-salat, kulli yawm. All right. So and then that's like okay, ana, right? And then the last one will be the masdar, which is dhahab. All right. ما أريد let's say for example like ما أريد الذهاب إلى أمريكا or something like that, something of that. I would keep it like real basic. I wasn't trying to because I'm trying to think of sentences that I would have written at like that time, right? As a little baby, right? So trying to formulate my ABC sentences, but so something just very simple like ما أريد الذهاب إلى أمريكا. Or الذهاب إلى أمريكا كابوس, something of that nature, because I might throw in like caboose because I learned the word from somebody else. So I try to throw in the vocabulary that I learned here and there also in these sentences. And then, so maybe we take like 4, 5, 6 words. What we were studying at the time, we were studying these books from Riyadh, which was in the Jamia al-Imam Muhammad ibn Saud. They had specific books that were for the Arabic program. But we were only studying the ta'bir books, because if you actually go online and you look up these books are very, very beneficial, very, very, very beneficial. But there's so many of them though. You got like a ta'bir, you got a qira'ah, you got a kitaba, You got little books on Tawheed, you got books on the Hadith, you got books that do like Tafsir of the Quran, all of this, but they're all geared towards like teaching the person the Arabic language in a manner that he'll be ready to use the Arabic language for all these different sciences. They even have like one for fiqh, but like I said, it's real basic for like people who are learning the Arabic language, not for like advanced people. And you can go online and you can find this, the whole Dammaj of the Jamia al-Imam Muhammad ibn Saud in the University from Riyadh. And you can see this whole Dammaj. It's beautiful, it's nice. The only thing that obviously like Abdul Hakim, he didn't like about the structure of the book was good. He didn't like the pictures, obviously, because we had the fact that we didn't have access to the book. So what we had to do was like, and this is back in the days, right? So we didn't have flash drives. We didn't have all this type of stuff. So if I wanted to copy the book, I had to take somebody else's copy, take it to a print shop. You know, they take it apart and they run it through the printer. They print me a copy. Then they staple his back together, staple mine together, and then that's it. That's how we have the book. So every time that somebody wanted to print the book, you know, we had to give the book to somebody, and they, like, again, it gets ripped open. So we didn't have the original books. I think one brother actually did have the original book, and he gave it to me. But it was only level 4. Level 4. We didn't have like I think when I started with Abdul Hakim, we were on level 2. The level 2 book. Like, that's where he was starting. So yeah, I skipped level 1, and I didn't even finish level 2 with him. I think I got to like halfway through level 2, and then khalas, I left the class, and I started taking durus, because at that point I wasn't like I was fluent in the Arabic language. I wasn't. I was still very weak, but I had gotten to the point where like, okay, I memorized al-Usul al-Thalatha. I could understand. You know, I got to the point where I could start to actually understand what I was reading in al-Usul al-Thalatha. You know, I was memorizing al-Arba'in al-Nawawiyya. Still the same thing. I can understand a good chunk of it, not a lot of it. But I got to the point where I was like, I want to start studying this stuff now. And then the class that I was taking with Arabic is kind of biting into my time. But I was, like I said, I honestly, if I could go back, I would have at least finished the entire level 2 with Abdul Hakim. Like, you know, that's hindsight, right? You know, because like I said, I got to the point where I could but I was still really weak. And Allah knows best, maybe if I just sat with him, you know, but, you know, qadar Allah ma sha'a. There's nothing that we can say, but I did actually go back. I tried to go back into the class, but the thing that just got me bored, it wasn't the class. Like, Abdul Hakim is an excellent teacher, but the other students, we had a few French brothers, we had maybe one British brother, you know, we had like a little mixture of like foreigners, you know. They just weren't doing what Abdul Hakim would tell them to do. So I would be sitting there bored. Like, I'd literally be sitting there with my head down while he's explaining stuff to them. And then he'll call on me and I'll just give the example. I'll give the, you know, I'll give him the answer. Whatever he's asking, I would just answer it or give him a sentence or whatever. So I got really, really bored with that. So once I went in to go try to get into the other durus, and then I came back to his lesson. I went to him, I said, where are you at in the book? I'll come back and I need to, you know, do some touching up a little bit. You know, so I came back in, it was like the same stuff again, you know, where it's just like I was answering the question, nobody was like, everybody was like, I'm like, yeah, I'm out. I can't deal with this, man. I can't deal with it. So, because I wanted to move, I want to go forward. I don't want to be sitting there like having him sit there the whole class explain something that's clear. So it's like Waller. So, you know, and I said I gotta move, and this is I felt like it was holding me back. So, but like I said, anyways, going back to his method. So the way that he did it, like I said, he put it in the sentences. So, ذهب أحمد إلى السوق أذهب إلى المسجد لقضاء الصلاة كل يوم أنا ما أريد الذهاب إلى أمريكا, whatever. Okay, so that's 3 sentences. Then we take like another word like درس أحمد اللغة العربية أدرس اللغة العربية في اليمن. You know, أنا أحب دراسة اللغة العربية. You know, it's just like real simple sentences so you can understand exactly what this word means. Then we have like خرج أحمد من المسجد بعد الدرس. خرجت من المسجد بعد الدرس. What was it like? Let me see. ما أريد الخروج. ما أحب الخروج من المسجد بعد الدرس. Like maybe like after Fajr, for example. You say like, for example, ما أحب الخروج من المسجد بعد صلاة الفجر. Because you know everybody sits in the masjid after Fajr. So stuff like that, you know. And then you got them in the notebook. You wrote them down by hand. First off, you write them in a garbage notebook. You know, just any notebook, right? First you get them checked. And then once you got the sentences checked, then you write them into like a nicer notebook. Like, let me see. That's I mean, I wouldn't say like we didn't have like notebooks like this in Dammaj, but I'm saying like you would have like a nicer, like this, like is a much nicer notebook. Like this is like right here. Whenever I prepare the khutbahs, I write them in like these type of notebooks, so I can just keep reading them. You know, because what I do is I take all the different ayats, like the different ayat and hadith that are basically by topic, right? So like you see the first topic is like Ta'atul Rasul. So then you're going to see like all the different ayat and then one hadith in that regards, right? Then the second topic is a tahdhir min mukhalafat al-nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You got the ayat, the hadith, you know, and then you got like, for example, man al-khasirun, because I always keep all the time, I always keep saying the word loser, like these are the losers, right? And I wanted to show how many times, and I don't want to show every time, but I tried to show in the Quran how many times that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called them losers. You know, so this way the people can say, why do you keep calling them losers? Allah called them losers. You know, kun min as-sabirin. So like this type of notebook, like it's nicer, right? And then you know you can keep it sealed up. You got a little thing where you can keep the page where you're memorizing. You know, so it's much nicer, right? You can get these at Walmart. So or order them from Amazon, right? So you take like a notebook like this, and this is where you keep your sentences. This is like your, you know, this is the book you keep close to your chest. You don't take this out your house, you know, because obviously you take the cheap notebooks with you. That way, if you lose it, you lose it. But like for example, like I got everything that I have written in this notebook. If I take it to the lesson, and I leave it in the masjid, then what happens? It's gone, right? So what I would do. Hey, you can tell that I did not prepare for this. Like, this is all impromptu, right? Even the Chiapas coffee was impromptu. But all right. Also, we didn't have notebooks like this in Yemen. But this I bought like a whole bunch of these. This is my son's, but same thing, right? It's the same concept. So what you could do is like, for example, the sentences that you're memorizing now. All right, so you take them and you write them out in this notebook. You know, you keep this one at home. This one doesn't go anywhere. This notebook stays with you all the time. You protect this thing with your life, right? But this one, if you lose it, so what? You just rewrite them. I mean, this one's only for the purpose of memorization. Because like I said, this is the type of notebook you can, you know, put in your pocket here, put in your pocket of your throw, put in the pocket of, you know, wherever. And then you can just keep this with you. So like, for example, if it's a hadith that you're memorizing, if it's you know, just the sentences, you can write the sentences out in the notebook. And every time, like, because a lot of the times what happens is when we pray, there's like this little 5 to 10 minute gap. I would say about 5-minute gap between the end of prayer, the salat, and when the sheikh gets up in the chair and starts the lesson. You take this out and you just keep reading. So that's what we would do. Like whatever we were memorizing, we just take it out and start memorizing it before the sheikh got up and started. You know, sometimes he'll sit in the chair, he'll start moving stuff around on the table. He'll open up the book, he'll look at it, he'll be reading. So we'll keep reading and reading until he says Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Once you hear that, close the book and get ready, you know, to focus on the lesson. So I mean, these are the types of things. Or I mean, obviously we didn't have these types of notebooks in Dammaj. We just take the cheap notebooks, and those are the ones that we would read from when we were outside, you know. And then like I said, the nicer one, you keep that hidden, you keep that with you. You don't take that. Same thing with these. I take these cheap spiral whenever I'm going to actually give the khutbah. When I give the khutbah, I have, like, when I'm memorizing it, you see, I write them out in these spiral notebooks, because that way I could just sit it out, you know, whenever, just in case I get lost, I can set it down like that and just, you know, see everything. But this is what I actually memorize from. Like when I'm reading outside, like if I'm in the car or whatever, this notebook will be with me because it's just cheaper. If I lose it, so what? You know, I can just come back and just rewrite it from these. Here's only the khutbah that I'm memorizing at the time. That's the only thing. So once I'm done with this one, then I'll go on the next 2 pages and write out the next khutbah. So that's what I used to do. The same thing with the sentence notebook. Like I said, that main book, you keep it at home, and then you got a cheaper one that you memorize from. You take that everywhere you go because you never know. You know, sometimes you might be in the masjid and you feel like I don't feel like going home. I don't want to sit in the room. I want to go out and maybe sit out in the desert somewhere under a tree. And you do that. You have your notebook with you. You just go. You know, you leave the masjid after the dars and you go maybe grab a cup of tea or something from the restaurant. And you just go sit out in the desert. Go sit out in the wadi. Go sit out wherever underneath the tree. Watch out for thorns, by the way. You have to make sure that you take like a prayer rug or something that you can wash them. Like sweep the thorns away because in the cedar trees they have a lot of thorns and those thorns are huge. Those are huge. Those are not like thorns that you want going in your backside if you sit on them. I mean, they've gone in my foot so many times. They go through the shoe and into the foot. Those thorns are huge. But whatever, you know. But the main thing is that you keep. One thing is, like he always said, read all the sentences out loud. Whenever you're reading the sentences, don't read them don't do that. Because you want to practice all the skills. Like when you're writing the sentences out in the notebook, you're practicing writing. When you're saying them out loud, you're practicing like you're speaking. But because you're saying them out loud, you're also listening to yourself to make sure that you're hitting every single, like Yuridu Ahmedu an yathhaba ila al-masjidi. You know, and you read it out like that in the beginning. Now, obviously, over time, once you memorize and you know, like, because at that time we didn't study now. In the beginning, we would just study how to speak, and we would study sarf. So we would study, like, you know, like I said, we would focus on like getting the madari, the maldi, madari, and the masdar of every single word, every single fi'l, and learning how to use it. And then also because he taught us later on the ism fa'il and the ism maf'ul, so you start to write sentences with those. Once we got to that level where we was teaching that. So like for example, dhahaba. So now you have ذهب أحمد إلى المسجد أذهب إلى المسجد لقضاء الصلاة كل يوم. And then you have, like, for example, okay, أنا ما أريد الذهاب إلى أمريكا. All right, now you have ذاهب. أنا ذاهب إلى المسجد الآن. You know, so you can make, and even at one point I started to write my own conversations. So like, you know, like for example, you say like for example, أين تذهب, and then you the response of the sentences will be with the, you know, you have 2 different responses. You could respond with the fi'l mudari, or you could respond with the ism fa'il. So the response with the fi'l mudari, أذهب إلى المسجد, or أنا ذاهب إلى المسجد, like this, and you just keep reading it out, reading it out loud, and practicing it over and over and over and over and over again. And then and what happens is, like, as you start to get in the conversation, you start to notice that it just starts to flow out, like you because you have these sentences memorized, so you just have to put them in the context that you're using them for, you know. So and it becomes so much easier. And subhanallah. So I mean, we used to do that if there was an ism maf'ul, because obviously we're like, you don't say madhub. We don't. I mean, I don't know of a word in the Arabic language, madhub. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I never heard it before. But you, like, for example, like madrub, right? So you have like daraba, yadribu, daraban, and darib, wa madrub. So you can say, like, for example, daraba Ahmedu saliha. All right, adribu akhi kull yawm. You know, so adribu akhi kull yawm. And then you can say, let me say, ana darabtu akhi daraban. You know, if you want to show like like using the masdar for ta'keed. And then you can say, like, for example, like ana daribun akhi, ana daribun, you know, ana daribun akhi alan, whatever. I mean, I'm just, you know, but akhi madrub, akhi madrub. You know, just like simple sentences. Just the whole point is to get to, because you're not trying to like write stories. What you're trying to do is just put the word into a context that now every time that you think of like that meaning, like what you're trying to say, the sentence will pop in your head. And that's what started to happen. After I read those sentences so many times, every time that I got to that where I wanted to use that word, the sentence will pop in my head. Not the translation, not so what I had actually written in the Arabic language is what popped in my head. And then I did that for like 6 months, 8 months. And then after that, then I just started memorizing the definitions from the ma'ajim. So me and one brother, Nuruddin, we actually started sitting down and actually we're going to memorize the dictionary. You know, because I mean, like I said, I mentioned this before. Whenever you start to do things, you got to look for people that are just like, they're like you. You know, if you're like one of those people that just, you know, I want to do something that nobody else has done, you need to find a person that you sit down with that also has that same attitude, that same mindset. Like, you know, we're gonna take this to the next level, type of thing. You know, so me and the brother Nuruddin, we used to just sit there and just like memorize definitions, memorize like stuff from the dictionary. So, and then that way it becomes sealed. You know, because again, you know, once you start after the sentences, the whole point of the sentences is like learning how to use the language and put it into a sentence, put it into something beneficial. Once you know how to do that, all right. Once I've studied with Abdul Hakim, then I memorized al-Ajrumiyya, then I started to understand Nahu. Now I understand how to put the words into sentences. Now it's just a matter of now I need what? I need more words. I need more vocabulary. I need to add to this, to what I have. And that's when we just started just memorizing the dictionary. Yeah, so of course we didn't memorize the whole entire dictionary, but we just like, you know, even till today, I have notebooks that I have like just where I keep definitions of words in the, you know, from the dictionary and the, you know, and if sometimes somebody will ask me about one of those words and I give them the definition from the dictionary or whatever, and then they think, oh my God, mashallah, you're so knowledgeable. No, I'm not knowledgeable. You just happen to ask about that, you know, those few words that I memorized. But anyways, you know, so yeah, I mean, however you do it is you know, the sky's the limit after that. You start reading Arabic poetry, you start going to like you know, like because you start with like a marjam, and inshallah that's something that I'll get to later on. But you start with like a smaller dictionary, one of those baby dictionaries, and you start to move up to like Qamus al-Muhit or Misbah al-Manir. Then after that, then you start to move on to like dictionaries like Lisan al-Arab. And then that's when you're like really understanding the word, because all of the Arabic language is just like, you have to have evidence for it, right? So you can't say like, for example, just like if we say like this is the hukum. If somebody came up to and asked me, or like for example, is it permissible to make wudu, you know, if the water is already been used? Like for example, somebody made wudu and there's water and it dripped into the bucket, you know, mixed with this water. You know, the person was making wudu in this water like this. Is it permissible for me to come along? And if I say yes, it's permissible, what are they going to say? They're going to say, what's your evidence? What's your dalil? You give them the hadith, you know. So there's a different hadith in Bulugh al-Maram, you know, like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam كان النبي أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يتصل هذا كان يتصل بفضل ميمونة. This is a ghusl. So if he's making a ghusl بفضل ميمونة, then obviously it's permissible also to make wudu. And also you have the hadith where him and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Aisha radiallahu anha, sorry, they would you know, would actually make and take a ghusl from the same thing. So they're dipping their hands into but you have this is the evidence, right? So that's it. Now, if you look at like the Arabic language, you have to, you know, use this word in the way that the Arabs used it. So then you say, okay, so what's the evidence for that? Like, how do we know this? You know, number one, I mean, obviously the main source of the Arabic language in its purest form is the Quran. The Quran is the purest khalas. The ahadith are number two, but the thing is that there is an ikhtilaf in that regards amongst the ulama from before of language, because why? See, the Quran, you have to memorize it the way it was sent down, but the hadith we can narrate it by meaning. So we don't know if the hadith, like for example, if this was narrated by meaning or if this was the actual speech, is the way the Prophet ﷺ said it in this exact words, or was it narrated with the ma'na. So some of the ulama, I mean, this is a rare opinion, but they won't use the hadith for evidence in the Arabic language for that purpose, because for example, like Bukhari rahimahullah, if Bukhari narrated the hadith from meaning, by meaning, well, Bukhari came after the time that the Arabic language, like there was the ulama differ in this regards. Some of them say 50 Hijri, some of them say 100 Hijri. Like at this point, it's like the cutoff point for the Arabic language. It's no longer you're not allowed to use anything as evidence after this point. And it's really I would go more along the lines with 50 Hijri, because by Mia Hijri there's so many ajam, like non-Arabs that came into the religion, and then there was all the mistakes started. So like for example, the time of Bukhari, the time of Muslim, the time of Imam Ahmed, the time of even Imam Malik, all of the muhaddithin that put these hadith into books, they all came after that period where there's a cutoff point. So Bukhari is known to show, for as far as the permissibility of narrating the hadith by ma'na. So if he narrated the hadith by meaning, and he didn't narrate the actual wording, this is what they're saying. This is the opinion and why they say what they say. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying this is why they say they don't use the hadith. I don't agree with this, because obviously we have a nahaya, and we have other evidences to show that this is the correct way of using the language anyway. So, but this is what they'll say, is that if Bukhari narrated the hadith bil ma'na, then it's not going to be accepted as evidence in the Arabic language, because Bukhari comes after that time, after that cutoff point, where anything that's added, anything that you see that didn't exist before this time, it's not the Arabic language. So this is why the Arabs were so keen on preserving the poetry, because the poetry was like the vastest resource that they had as far as how the Arabs used the language, before Islam and at the onset of Islam and those first 50 years after Hijrah, So the Arabic poetry is that, what you call it, I guess you could say, like I said, the vastest resource, right? The largest resource that you have. The Quran is a large resource, but the Arabic poetry is just, it's endless, and there's so many words obviously that are in the Arabic language that aren't in the Quran. So that's why you see that they had this like they were so keen on just preserving this. So when you go to Lisan al-Arab and you're looking up a word, what he'll do is he'll give you the context that it was used with the evidence either from the Quran, from a hadith, or from poetry, or even from the khitab, because you got some of the people like al-Jahil, he used to compile, and you see this also with like al-Kamil al-Mubarrad and other individuals that compile these books of adab. So there's poetry, and it's also al-khitab, it could be a khutbah, it could just be like a conversation between two individuals that they memorize to show like the usage of the words. It could be anything like this, right? So they used to preserve try to preserve as much as they could of the Arabic language, because this is their evidence to show that this is how the word is used. If you don't have that evidence, then this is not this is not considered Arabi. The Arabi is it was considered Arabi is what the Arabs themselves at that time, how they used the word and how they put it into their speaking, into their poetry and everything, how they used it. That's what's considered Arabi. So you got the Quran, the number one source. Then you got the hadith. Then you got the poetry, and then you got any of the other speech of the Arabs that was just recorded in that time. Like I said, you can go look in the books like Al-Kamil al-Mubarrad, Al-Amali lil-Qali, Al-Bayan wa Tabyin lil-Jahil, and you see they compiled all of this stuff. They compiled it just to for the preservation of the Arabic language. So you need evidence. So when you go to Lisan al-Arab, that's what you're going to start to get. You're going to start to see like the Arabic in its purest form. This is the way because then you're going to start to see this is real Arabic, and this is what the people use nowadays. They go back and see how they used it, like the meanings that they actually used it for. And so all of these sites, you start to really get that when you get into like Lisan al-Arab. You're going to get it when you get into Qamus al-Muhit. But when you get into Lisan al-Arab, akhi, it's just like you've entered a whole new realm. You're on a whole different level. And you start going through like Lisan al-Arab and start to really pick up the language, and then you start to really understand the poetry starts to have this meaning. You have like another book, it's called Asas al-Balagha, which is actually a book written by Zamakshari, but it's in Balagha, so you can avoid his because he's Mu'tazili, so he has some major mistakes in Aqidah. But this book is only for Lugha, because he was a lughawi. He's really, really strong. And even till today, he has a book that's called Al-Kishaf, which is a tafsir. A lot of the ulama, not the smaller students, but the ulama, they use it just because of the aspects of the language, of the lugha. Because Zamakhshari was very strong in the language. But he was messed up as far as his aqidah was concerned. So you had like that book, it's called Asasul Balagha. It's just basically a dictionary, and he shows you all these different words from the poetry of the Arabs and how it's used. And he gives you, the examples. So, I mean, these types of books are like necessary, because then you start to really learn the Arabic language, and that's what you're trying to do. You have to get to the point, because you're trying to understand the Sunnah, you're trying to understand the Quran and understand the Sunnah. So you have to get to like a level of, obviously we're never going to get to the level of understanding the Arabic language the way that Sahaba understood the Arabic language. It's possible. It's impossible. I mean, I'm not even going to sit here and try to sugarcoat that. Like, oh, if you work hard. No, you can work hard your whole entire life. You can study the Arabic language 10 hours a day, every day for the next 80 years. You're not going to understand the Arabic language the way that the Sahaba understood it. Absolutely not. Not even close. But you can try to get as close as possible. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, Qaribu wa saddidu. Qaribu wa saddidu. Get as close as you can to the target, or what? Or hit the target. In this case, we're never going to be able to hit the target. But you try to get as close as you can. Get as close as you can to hitting the target. So to understand the Sunnah, we have to have that type of understanding. We have to understand it the way that they understood it. We can't understand the Sunnah the way that we understand the Arabic language today. So that's why if you give like the Sunnah, like you give the books of Hadith to like an Arab who hasn't studied the Deen, he can speak Arabic based on his knowledge of the Arabic language. He'll know some things, and he's going to be ignorant of a lot of things. And he'll probably mistranslate a lot, if he's trying to explain to you what the meaning is, because again, his Arabic language is not up to par with that language, the language that he's reading and the language that he's trying to explain. So for you to understand the Quran and the Sunnah, to understand the speech of the Salaf, you have to get to that level of Arabic, the level of Arabic that they were at. And that's the only way that you do that is by getting into those types of books. You have to study Nahu, you have to study Sarf, you have to get into go through the progression of the dictionaries. Start off with the Ma'ajim, go to Qamus al-Muhit, go to Lisan al-Arab. Or if you don't have Qamus al-Muhit, go to al-Misbah al-Manir. Misbah al-Manir is the one I think Sheikh Muhammad ibn Adam, rahimahullah, I think he memorized it. I honestly think he memorized it. But you have these types of smaller dictionaries that you can use. The Ma'ajim, the Marjam is going to be your first dictionary for a long time. I would say probably for like about a year, 2 years, maybe 3, depending on your level. And then, but throughout those 3 years, you can start to use other dictionaries, But you have to have a strong knowledge of Arabic language to get into like Al-Misbah al-Munir, because he's not going to explain every single word. He's only going to explain the words that were not really common amongst the Arabs of his time. Which, for us, that's like, come on, man. Every word is not common for us. So we have to look up everything. That's where you need the Marjam, the Ma'ajim. But then once you get the Lisan al-Arab, it's on, man. It's on. Then you get into poetry of the Arabs, and then and then when you go back and you read through the Sunnah, you read the Quran, you read through the Tafsir, you read through the Sunnah, you read through the explanations of the like Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar, of Al-Khattabi, Imam al-Nawawi, and these individuals were super strong. I mean, they were very strong, extremely strong in the Arabic language. So when you go back and you read, you have a different understanding. So the person who just goes overseas and studies Arabic for 2 years, 3 years, yeah, he'll come back and be able to teach Kitab Tawheed, Al-Usul al-Thalatha. But like his understanding is not going to be up to par, where he's going to be able to sit down and truly understand what he needs to understand. So I mean, this should be our goal, anyways, and that's where it started. It started with like writing those sentences in a notebook, and you just keep progressing. But that desire has to be there. And whenever that desire starts to die out, you got to go find a way to pick it back up. Read about the lives of the Salaf, do whatever. And we used to do that all the time. Whenever we used to get, because you're stuck in a village, man. So we're from America, and we're in a village. You get bored, man. You get really, really bored. You want to just go out and just do something, but there's nothing to do. So you start to get kind of burnt out. So you have to like find ways to just keep it going, to keep yourself where it's like every day that you just can't wait for the next day to wake up, inshallah, and get something new, learn something new, do something new. So you find new books, and this is what we used to do. we had to just keep progressing and keep progressing, because once you stop progressing and once you feel like you're comfortable and you've reached, like, that's it, you have to leave the village, because there's no more benefit. You're not going to get any more benefit once you think that you've arrived to some type of final destination. You're done. You're done. You're going to go back to your country, and you probably give dawah, or you probably just go get a job and just live a normal life. But whatever the case is, you're done. You're finished once you feel like you've reached that destination. You have to just keep that fire burning. And the only way that you can keep it burning, you just got to keep moving up. You got to keep it progressing. Wallahu musta'an. I'll stop it now because I know this is a long video.